Just going to go over the odds in your review for tomorrow, and then I'll let you complete the evens. So this will finish our Unit 8. This is what your test will be on tomorrow. So we'll start with what we learned first, and that's breaking these down. Remember, you just do it by repeated division. So I'm going to divide by the smallest number possible that can go in there. 2, it's even, so 2 can go in. So I'll divide by 2. That gives me 64. I'll keep dividing by 2. I keep dividing by 2 as long as I can. Looks like this one's going to go all the way. Keep dividing by 2, and that one, everything, it was divided only by 2 all the way through. And so then remember, for every pair I see, I put 1 outside. So here's another pair, and then I have 1 single that doesn't have a pair that goes inside. So my next thing that I'm going to do is multiply this all together. 2 times 2 times 2. So this is 8 times the square root of 2. And then that would be my final answer on that problem. It's not always going to be 2's, as we've seen in some of the other problems we've done. So I'm going to do my repeated division on 343. This one's not even, so I can't divide it by 2. So I'll start with 3, see if I can get 3 in there. Sometimes I take my calculator and see if I can actually divide it by that number. So 343 divided by 3, that doesn't go in, so I'll do, I know 4 won't because it's not even. I know 5 won't because it doesn't end in 5 or 0. 6 won't because it's not even, so up next is 7. So I'll divide by 7, 49. So 7, that's 49. I know 49's divisible by 7. And again, I ended up with a problem that had all the same number. It's not always going to be like that, but for every pair, 1 goes out. Whatever doesn't have a pair stays in. So now I've got 7 times the square root of 7. Now keep in mind, when you're doing this, let's say, for example, this is sort of like an off example. Let's say I did my division, divided, and I divided by 2, and then I divided by 2 again, and then I divided by 3, and then I divided by 3 again. Excuse me. And then I divided by 5, and I was left with 7. Okay? Oops. Make it so you can see. Left with 7. So when I'm done, I've got a pair of 2's, I've got a pair of 3's, and then a single 5 and a single 7. So those will go inside. So when I'm done, I multiply the 2 and the 3 on the outside and the 5 and the 7 on the inside. And that becomes my answer. Now I was just showing you an example. That's not a particular problem. It's not the answer to one of these. I'm just showing you what happens when you have different numbers. We just happen to have 2 that had all the same numbers. Well, then we stepped it up a notch and we said, okay, well now let's multiply them together. So I'm going to do the multiplication, and so anything that's in can be multiplied together. So 15 times 5, if I need a calculator I will. 15 times 5, I get 75. So this is the square root of 75, and then I'll break that down over on the side. It's not even, so I'll try 3. 3 doesn't go into 25, it's 5. So now I have a pair of 5's and the 3 that doesn't have a pair to go with it, so it goes inside. If I have numbers on the outside, they're separate. So in a problem like 7, the negative 2 has to stay outside and the 3 times 6 get multiplied inside. And then my breakdown goes on the inside. Divide by 2, divide by 3, for every pair. So this would be negative 2 times 3, that gets pulled out, times the 2 that didn't have a pair. So the negative 2 stays out there. The 3 comes from this pair of 3's that I had, and then I had that lonely 2. So my final answer on this one is negative 2 times 3, negative 6 times the square root of 2. So final answer. So those are the multiplying problems. If I had 2 numbers outside, I'd multiply those together too. Then we had some where we were adding and subtracting, but before I add and subtract, I need to break these down. And I always like to write down the answers of things that I get, so if I see it again, I don't have to break it down again. So I'll do 8 divide 8 by 2, it's 4, 2. So 8 becomes negative 2 times the square root of 2. So that pair of 2's went on the outside, the negative was there, I just put that in front, and then the 1, 2 goes on the inside. Now plus, now I'm going to break down 20. Divide by 2, divide by 2. So now I have 2 times the square root of 5. So this here is 2 times the square root of 5. The square root of 20 equals 2 times the square root of 5, but there's already a 2 here, so that's 2 times the square root of 5. And then minus, this can't be broken down anymore, and sometimes you can recognize it right away and sometimes you can't, but this one I can tell, it's just 2. So I'm going to go ahead and combine like terms. As long as they have identical radical parts, I can combine them together. So the square roots of 2, this is minus 2, so that's negative 4 times the square root of 2. So the negative 2 plus the negative 2, and then they had, it's just like doing negative 2x plus negative 2x. So the square root of 2 stays on as the variable. But here, I don't have anything I can combine it with, but I can multiply those two 2's in front. Well, I already broke this one down here. Remember, we found the square root of 20 is 2 times the square root of 5, so I'm going to do that here. This is 3 times 2 times the square root of 5. Minus, turns out here, square root of 6 can't be broken down, because if I try 6, it's 2 times 3. I don't have any pairs, that's all I have. Then minus 2 times the square root of 5, and remember, this right here would be 6 times the square root of 5 minus the square root of 6 minus 2 times the square root of 5. So the square root of 5's can be combined together. That's 6 minus 2, 4 times the square root of 5, and then this guy just goes on the end, minus the square root of 6. So my final answer there, 6 times the square root of 5 minus 2 times the square root of 5 gives me 4 times the square root of 5, and then the minus square root of 6 doesn't have anything that it can combine with. So the last type of problem that we did was dividing, and we have to do something called rationalizing the denominator. You're not allowed to have a radical in the denominator. It's one of those math rules. So I will multiply the top and the bottom by whatever radical is in the denominator. And in that process, I get 5 times the square root of 3 over. This right here would be the square root of 3 times the square root of 3, or the square root of 9, which is 3. When you multiply a radical by itself, the radical drops. There's nothing that can be broken down, so I'm done with that problem. However, in problem like 15, when I multiply by the square root of 5 on the top and on the bottom, I will get the square root of 20 over 5. Now the square root of 20, like the square root of 3 can't be broken down, but the square root of 20 can. We already broke that down, remember, earlier. So earlier we found what the square root of 20 is. The square root of 20 is 2 times the square root of 5. So I can just replace that there. I'm going to move this up. That's 2 times the square root of 5 over 5. And then that's my final answer. So sometimes when I'm done rationalizing, I'm going to have to break it down. All right, so your job is going to be to finish the evens, and then this is the material that will be on your test tomorrow. Have a great day, and I will see you on Friday.